Welcome to the new Spotlight on Indie author interview series, where we chat with authors to get to know them and their books. We're visiting today with Susana Imaginario. She is a Portuguese author living in Ireland with her husband and their exceptionally spoiled dogs. A lifelong misfit, she crafts genre-bending novels that fuse mythological fantasy and slipstream fiction with dark humor and psychological depth. Her award-winning Timelessness series reimagines Norse, Greek, and Egyptian mythologies in a cosmic and metaphysical battle against time, earning praise for its wit and originality. Susana's hobbies include reading voraciously, playing board games, exploring ancient ruins, and talking to trees. A former aerialist with a background in psychology and entertainment, she brings a unique perspective to her storytelling with tales that challenge reality and spark the imagination. Susana is the author of the Timelessness series available on Spotlight on Indie. The links to her profile will be included in the description of this video along with her website. Welcome, Susana. Is there anything I left out that you'd like to share?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. No, that's pretty much it.
So you're Portuguese living in Ireland with your husband. So did you want to give us a little background there? Did you start writing when you were in Portugal, or what made you move to Ireland?
Oh dear, okay, so two questions. I started writing pretty much as soon as I learned how to write, but I started in Portuguese, of course. Writing in English happened when I moved to England, a long time ago, and I realized that my English sucked. I mean, I could understand pretty much everything in English, but I speak pretty much the same. So there was no improvement there, but my writing really needed improvement in my reading and writing. So I started reading in English in earnest, and I got a few books on creative writing because I didn't want to just do grammar exercises and be bored to tears. And then I started, the writing stories was already something I was doing, and I just started trying to do it in English. And, well, I guess I succeeded eventually. So I didn't publish right away. Of course, I had just piles of drafts. It didn't even occur to me until much later. And I moved here when I got married. We met in England. We were both working there, and his family is Irish. He wanted to come back, and we couldn't afford anything over there. The situation was already getting so bad where we lived, and I was already unrooted. We figured, well, let's go to Ireland. We wanted a space, with space. And so, yeah, we moved here to the middle of nowhere.
So how long have you been writing?
This particular series, or?
Yeah, in general, even, and this series.
Like I said, since I knew how. At the moment I learned how to write, I always found a way to start writing down the things that I imagined. I mean, I can't draw. Maybe that was a factor, but I have of all these ideas, images, conversations in my head, and I just had to write them down.
It sounds like every writer.
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of a madness, I think.
So when did you start publishing? Did you start with a small publisher or a big publisher, or did you just go into self-publishing? How did that start?
Well, I had a few conversations with people in the industry way back when, and I quickly realized it would be very hard for me to get published. Not only the series itself was in the genre that doesn't even have an Amazon category. It was, very niche. I didn't quite fit the profile of what it wasn't the type of story. People wanted retellings, and whenever I said I was writing based on Greek mythology, a story based on Greek and Norse mythology, they would ask me if it was a retelling. And no, it wasn't a retelling. Retellings were already very popular back then, like 2016, 18, even before that. But, and no, I try to explain, this is kind of a continuation of the myth. It happens, the premise is everything that happens, mythology is kind of this God's history, a bit distorted because, humans and time distorts things. But, everything happens far into the future, and that's why all the pantheons are kind of there. No, that was just a bit too out there. It was a hard sell, and so I figured, well, why not? Why not try it? At least that when self-published became not only available but popular. I guess people were making it, and I read a couple of self-published books back then, and I was like, oh, no, I can do better than that. Actually, I think I am doing a little bit better than that, and maybe that was a bit of arrogance as well, and pride, just a little bit. But I thought so, that at least it was at the same level. It wasn't worse, and so I decided, why not? And I did, and well, so many mistakes were made. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't. Marketing is still an enigma. But yeah, it was a rough journey. But if I hadn't self-published, I would still not be published, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of people. It's kind of been the great equalizer that the technology came along and Amazon opens its doors. They were kind of the first ones to really do that for authors. And then, of
Yeah,
course, several others followed suit, and Smashwords came along to kind of aggregate it towards lots of other retailers. And now we got Drafted Digital, who took over Smashwords. I mean, the whole landscape changes and
mm,
fluctuates, but everything changes.
it's in constant flux. You can't. I never, update it. I try, but whenever I get a sense of something or set a plan in motion, then no, we need to do something else. Exhausting.
Have you found anything that in particular that works, that maybe worked for a while to get some traction with your books?
Ah, being political, but I hate it. And it's always you have to deal with all the crap that comes with it. And yeah, I have strong opinions, and voicing them has attracted many readers. But I would rather people, be attracted to the books directly, not my opinions. So, like I said, it's a double-edged sword in that regard. Because you accomplish your goal, but not in a very nice way. So I try to mix
Yeah.
my posts, political writing nonsense, just keep it bad. But yeah, political self, and I'm ready to try something different. Let's put it this way, because sometimes it's not worth the trouble. It's what
Yeah.
gets attention these days.
Yeah.
It is, unfortunately.
So you mentioned Greek mythology, but what else inspired that? Because in the summary, you said Egyptian and Norse mythology also.
Yes, so those are the main three, and those are the three that I'm comfortable with. So apologies to all other pantheons out there. I'm just focusing on these ones. I kind of bring them all together, like I said, far into the future. So the myth kind of happens, and then this is happening at a different time. And basically, I'm writing a continuation of the stories and expanding them. So it's not a retelling per se. It's based on mythology, and then I carry on and create my own mythology at this point, create my own universe. And it was because I've always been fascinated with mythology, especially Greek mythology. And so that's when I started, and then I learned the Norse mythology, and I found some parallels, between the characters and their archetypes. And of course, I studied psychology at university. That's my background. And I was always fascinated by the archetypes, by stories, and then it all came together. And I don't think I could escape. I don't think I could write anything else. Now I do, but back then, the way to go.
Tell us a little bit about the characters then. You in the information you gave me, you had mentioned that the books have different characters in each one.
No, they have different focus in the
A
characters.
different
Like
focus. I'm sorry. So they have
yes,
different focus in each book,
yes. So
but they're all
there's
connected.
yeah, it's an ensemble. So
Okay.
there's no main character exactly. They're all kind of stars in. in their own way. So, but the focus changes. So the first four books, actually, they were initially one big book that I had to split when I decided to self-publish. I realized I couldn't afford an editor for all that, which was a good decision for many reasons, because had I published the way that it was back then, it was a mess. Just that first book, when it first came out, it still needed work. And then I had the opportunity to rework it and work the other sections of the story. So that's how I created the series. So the first book, it's focused around the goddess of the soul. I guess it's not a spoiler at this point, Psyche, the Greek goddess of the soul. And there's not a lot about her mythology. So I changed if there's a retelling there, you can say, well, I did retold her situation a little bit and just to fit the rest of the story. She's kind of the main character, but there's 11 others. Yes, mistakes were made probably for such a small book to have so many main characters. And then it changes. Second book is another character that is a secondary character in the first book. Third book, another, etc., etc. And when I say main, they take the bulk of the chapters and the scenes, but they're not necessarily the most influential. It's just the story kind of revolves around them. It doesn't mean that it's about them, if it makes sense. So that's how I kind of structured it when
So
I
you have an
decided.
ensemble cast, basically.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so everyone kind of has their time in the limelight, and they're all
Hmm.
working together around the plot that you have structured.
Hmm.
Okay. And you have more than 4 books in this series. So tell us a little bit more about the other books then too, please.
The other books, so there's the standalone sequel, Oubli, which it's a little bit weird. I think I was probably not in a good place when I wrote it. It was shortened a lot. Again, it was much longer than it was, and I had to compress it, and I probably left all the good bits out. I don't know. And then I have standalone prequels, because I was trying to give people different ways to get into the series, and I had all these extra chapters, and they were too long to be chapters, and I just made it a little bit longer to be novellas. And that's Asterius, Clash of the Tricksters, and To Trick a Trickster.
Okay.
So there's three different ways to get into the madness, plus the original, weird gods.
And then
But
you have them on Spotlight in the order that people should read them, right? You have them numbered according to the order.
yes, yes.
Okay.
I mean, you
Is
you
there?
couldn't you couldn't put numbers on prequel, so
Mhm.
and I
Well,
don't think you can put a 3.5 or did I don't
no, the
remember.
system doesn't let you put
Yeah,
those
so
decimal
one
points in.
one of the there's a 3.5 book, and
Yeah, I've done series like that too, where I wanted to number them in between, and finally, I just as time went on, I just went, okay, I'm just going to number them in order because otherwise, readers think there should be another book in between here because there's a decimal point. I just went, oh, forget it.
I do worry that people skip book 3.5 and they get to the last book and just throw it at the wall because then they don't understand half of the things that happen. So again, like I said, mistakes were made.
Yeah,
If I
it's a
ever
learning
write another
experience.
series, I'll do a lot of things.
But that's part of the whole writing experience is and self-publishing is you might make mistakes at first, but then you learn and you grow as a writer too. What do you think aside from maybe, some of those mistakes that you made in the Timelessness series, what are the biggest things that you've learned in putting together a series like this?
Discipline. I mean, I already had a lot of it, but man, just how much willpower it takes to sit at the desk in front of the computer and just get it done. Especially when you are just so close, you can see the end, but you just realize we have one more scene to write, one more scene to revise. Oh, that's not quite there. It's like, oh, and the editing is painful as well. And you start questioning every word, every comma. So yeah, I learn how to persevere, how to force myself to just do the work, to not despair, even though, yeah, sometimes you do despair. And yeah, it taught me the patience and discipline.
What advice would you give somebody just starting out?
Well, first, the best advice that I was given as well was just finish it. And I followed that advice. And like recently, like this year, I decided not to follow that advice. So I started the project and then stopped it halfway to start another project. And, managed to put a little short story in between as well. And I thought, oh, I'm finally growing as a writer. Look at me, I'm amazing. And then I haven't written anything decent in the last 3 weeks because my brain is just stuck between these two projects and I can't, go one way or the other. So I need to sort that one out. But yeah, finish what you write. Pick one and finish it. I think that's my advice. Pick one
Yeah.
idea, one story, and just finish it before digressing into others.
See, and I'm the same way when I write. It's like I have to just stick with one project at a time. But I am just blown away by writers who talk about having multiple projects and they seem to
I
finish them
know.
all. And I'm going, how do you guys keep them all straight?
I can't. I realized I cannot. Especially
Hmm.
writing two complete. I thought that writing two completely different stories, different genres, different characters, that would be enough. But no, it's worse. It was easier to write a novella within the same universe than being in a completely different place. So you learn that.
I think that's part of the learning experience is just getting to know who you are as a writer,
Hmm.
where you're comfortable. Like I said, some of these writers they can do it, and I'm just blown away. And then there's you and me, who are apparently both the same. As that we found that we have to just stick to one focus and just continue to the end.
Yeah, sadly. I, maybe one day I can multi-write. Right now, no.
It's a talent that not everybody has, I guess. Well, I've known it for myself. I admire those who can do it, though.
Yeah, it always feels like other writers are having a better, much better time than we are, or they get things so much easier than we do, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's inevitable.
But you were talking about discipline, and you know what?
Hmm.
It takes a lot of discipline sometimes just to stick to one project because your mind wants to
Yeah,
go in so many different directions.
exactly, exactly. I sleep.
I have another question here because you also in your bio had mentioned Slipstream. So, what
Mm.
about that is particularly interesting to you? So, if you want to explain a little bit about it, and then why it's so attractive to you as a writer.
Okay, I once read the definition of slipstream as magic realism for Anglo-Saxons, and I laughed, but it's actually a pretty succinct way to put it. Instead of saying, "Oh, it's a mix of fantasy with science fiction and literary fiction." No, it's that, but it's more of a storytelling structure of how you approach that. It's different from traditional storytelling or the traditional hero's journey, even though it can be there as well. And like I said, I am Portuguese, and we have science fiction, but it's not the same. Our thing is magic realism. The language, I think itself in Spanish is similar, favors that kind of storytelling. Could be cultural as well. I never kind of deep dive into that subject. I'd rather keep it, mysterious. But we tell stories differently. And that's something that I've noticed when I started reading in English books. And they fascinated me for many reasons. But the stories were different. But that making the reality almost surreal sometimes was missing. Definitely from general fiction. That's why I was drawn then to fantasy because I could find that there. But it doesn't have to be with dragons and elves and orcs. That's all fine too. But my idea of fantasy was this magic realism, this different perception of the things around you and how to tell stories. And that's how I told my story. And then I realized I couldn't call it fantasy and I couldn't call it science fiction and I couldn't call it literary fiction either because I'm not that good a writer. And that's how I found the term slipstream and it fitted perfectly. And I said, oh, what a great marketing idea. And I've just spent the last few years explaining everyone what it is. But it's nothing new and there are plenty good books, maybe too good. authors and books in that category. It's basically where they put the stuff they can classify, right? But it's always something unusual. I was aiming for that. And some people react well. They can see that clash. They appreciate the novelty. Others, they never get it, and that's fine. I guess it's the same, no matter what you write.
So I don't know how comfortable and how much you want to give away of your stories, talking about Slipstream and it being more of a style thing. And I was just kind of thinking about, okay, so how are these books actually written in format, how the timeline goes and how the action actually flows in that?
Um, have you ever watched the movie Cloud Atlas?
No, I haven't.
The editing is unique, so it has been compared to it, and I based some of the connections in the editing of the film. So yes, there flashbacks. They are saying. I don't call it flashbacks because it's timelessness. Time is something completely arbitrary there, almost. Time is a god and is very whimsical sometimes. And so there's flashbacks and flash forwards, and I call them interludes for the most part. And some chapters I play with tense. Some chapters are in first person present. That dreaded. I didn't know it was a bad thing. I thought it was, it fitted what I was trying to do. Then we have other chapters in the past, first or third person, then one novella, the third person present, which again, people thought I was nuts. I play with tense, with time shifts, with interludes, with some chapters are named, some chapters are in Roman numerals, some chapters are just the numbers, others, are properly. It's all a puzzle. I like board games. I like games, and I structure it like a puzzle, but in a way that the emotional, more than the narrative A to B to C, proper progression, the emotional progression makes sense. It's one of those books. I think if you read it the first time, you might get entertained. It's fine. It's an entertaining story. I hope. Not too weird. But then when you read the second time and you see the events in order, then you go, oh, that was the plan, and I know it worked for several people. So that's Slipstream.
It's a very unique way to organize a book.
Lost was an inspiration. I probably shouldn't say this because some people love it, some people hate it. But no, it was an inspiration. I love how character driven it was and just how the the more bunkers it got, the more I liked it. I just hated the ending because it's the problem with these kinds of stories. They're very hard to wrap up, as I then found out by writing one. And especially since I had to kind of shorten it to keep it contained because otherwise I would be writing, Timelessness book 20, in my 80s. And I'm not sure I'm going to live that long. So I had to just shorten it a bit.
Right. Yeah. And people like to have series wrapped up. That's something that other authors have mentioned too, is they don't want to be the next George Martin and not have an unfinished series. They want to
Yeah,
make sure they
I was running that risk. I have pages and pages and pages of story written and even more to write, to tell, but I wanted to put something out there that someone could read at their leisure and in a decent amount of time. I don't want the people waiting. Even when I was releasing the books, I tried to release one a year. I couldn't afford the editing any faster. It wasn't because it was a marketing decision. It was just how things happened.
Yeah,
And,
I get it.
and now
It's
it's finished.
you got to save up the money to pay for those services. I get how that happens.
Yeah, just trickling a little bit every month. Come on.
Yeah. No, I know. It's hard, especially when you're doing it on your own. You're self-publishing and everything is on you and you got to pay
Mhm.
for everything. Well, the money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Did you want to tell a little bit about your characters and maybe a little bit more about the actual world that you created in Timelessness? Since you've got so many books out now, but for somebody new getting into it, what is there about it that you think would attract readers? Or what kind of reader do you want to attract? What is it about your characters that are going to interest people in continuing on the series?
Well, anyone who likes mythology, Greek, Norse, or Egyptian, will find something to like. Or even there's people who like things like Marvel, back in its day when it was still good, will find something to like. Loki is one of the characters, Thor as well, but he is only mentioned in the series. I'm writing a novel book where he features more. So what I did, I'm a very lazy world builder for a fantasy writer. That's why it's one of the reasons I don't usually call myself a fantasy writer, because I don't have this world building drive. I started with Greek mythology, but I set it in Norse cosmology, because Greek cosmology is the Mediterranean. It's fine, but everything happens in that scenario. And the Norse have 9 worlds, at least. And so I shamelessly just, use them. For Timelessness, I used one of them, Niflheim, Ice World, the Misty World, and where the underworld, the Norse underworld is. And I brought along the Olympian underworld just to shake things up, and added a section suitable for the living on the surface. That's in a nutshell my world. So I'm not even going to apologize, because, like I said, I'm not a world builder. I just wanted to create, the set for the players. This is a game. And yeah, so anyone who likes Norse cosmology, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, my characters, Psyche, Loki. So I have Seshat, Anubis from the Egyptian mythology. But I also have things that don't exist anywhere else. I have the Darken. She's a race of living dead created by Hel, the Norse goddess of the underworld. Loki's daughter. The father-daughter relationship is quite strong in Timelessness, and I don't think it was ever fully explored in any retelling, not one that I read particularly. And yeah, so those are the main characters pretty much. And there's humans, of course, and dryads, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's a blend of both fantastical creatures, mythological creatures, centaurs, and satyrs, and also just, plain average mortals. Later on, we have androids. Yeah, is anyone listening to me at this point? Just it is
Mythology and
crazy.
androids.
Yes, yes.
So
Because
what kind of
otherwise I get bored.
so you had to introduce something new there. So what kind of a setting is this? Is this more like an ancient world, a future world? You mentioned going forward and backwards in time. So what kind of different
It's
cultures
it's
besides those?
it's a clash. The androids, of course, are very advanced. They have their spaceships and things. The gods, they don't need spaceships. They can just pretty much go wherever they want, to some degree, and they can travel to the world trees, traveling to trees, as you do. And the mortals don't have a chance. They are kind of stuck there. And they live very humble and simple lives. They have no idea technology for them, or, the gods' powers. It's all the same thing. It really makes no difference. They always end up screwed to some degree. So there's always a clash going on, even amongst the gods, of course, because they have their different personalities and ways to get what they want. I really like to play with characterization, and when you are writing, in these bunker scenarios and gods, you can really push things. You can really push human nature to its extreme. What would this person do if they had unlimited power, or if they? It's an old question. It's been answered many times, and I just try to create a just slightly different scenario.
So you mentioned what would somebody do if they got unlimited power? Do any of the humans get powers in your series?
Yes, some do, and
Okay.
it's the core of the story of the first book. It's the Psyche. For those who are not familiar with the myth, she was a mortal, one of the few mortals that was then apotheosized into, and she became the goddess of the soul. through a whole set of ordeals. And this is, this kind of her life past that, after that, that's ancient history, but she's still trying to learn. And there are other characters that become immortal. Too many spoilers now.
Oh, those aren't spoilers. That's
No,
hardly anything. No, no. I feel like I've hardly touched the surface, actually.
I'm
um,
trying not to tell anything that goes past the first book, so it's not a
oh,
proper
okay.
spoiler.
Well, I'm kind of interested too how you got the three mythologies, but how do they relate? Because you've got them all together, but is there some way that I don't know if you've ever watched
Yes, I love.
Stargate SG-1?
I am rewatching it at the moment.
Okay,
It's one
okay.
of my
But
favorite TV shows. Yes.
they have the mix of the different species as the
Hmm.
different sets of gods. So, do you do something like that in your world? How did
Yep.
they get to be known as different gods, different sets of
Because
gods?
because we do, or the
Yeah.
reader does, and I have to start somewhere. Like I said, I write from the assumption that the myths were real, that some of those events happen, at least something close to those events happen, and this is the aftermath of those events thousands of years later. But yeah, Stargate was another huge influence, definitely, especially Stargate Atlantis. It was, yeah, SG-1 and Atlantis. I was always fascinated with that idea of, gods and aliens, where my mind goes when I write.
That's one of my favorite series is Stargate, ever
It's
since
really
that
good.
movie came out.
The movie is
But
also one of my favorites.
yeah, I could sit and watch that over and over again and not really get
Mm-hmm.
tired of it, even though I probably have it known by heart. But what I'm trying to get at though, are all of your gods like kind of like at Stargate where they're separate groups, or are they all together and then on for humans they just got to be known for different cultures, or how does that work?
Well, they are not being gods anymore. In this situation, they're just themselves, and they are kind of in a bad spot. So in this particular world, because it's an underworld, so some are dead, some are imprisoned. So as part of a punishment, their souls are imprisoned in mortal's body, not necessarily human, but in a physical, grounded body, and that's a huge punishment for them because then they can't use their powers, etc. And they are kind of, but there's some of them. Others are free, just causing chaos and mischief. Others are busy trying to keep the world together while all the stuff is going on. And yeah, that's why we get all these different perspectives throughout the 12 points of view and the multiple interludes. Kind of by the end of the book, you have the entire perspective, but about half of it you don't know what the hell is going on. But I promise the madness, that there is a method to it, and it will make sense in the end.
There's a method to the madness.
Yes.
Are there any particular characters that you're especially connected to? A lot of times a writer has a particular character or maybe a couple characters that just they're so easy for them because there's just some sort of connection. Do you have that with any of your characters? Any in the book that you'd want to maybe talk about a little bit?
Um, sure. It's easier to write some characters than others, and they're not usually or often or always, I should say, your favorite character. But I digress. So I mentioned Psyche, and she's probably the one I spent more time, inside her head, just trying to get her character right for what I needed her to be in this series. And because, it's one of the first characters we meet, I spent a lot of time making sure that people could immediately relate to her. Not like her, she's not likable, particularly. I wanted people to feel anchored to her, to feel what she was feeling throughout the experience. So yeah, that took some work. Another character that was supposed to be quite secondary was Arian. We ended up then changing her name later on with reason, but I'm not going to spoil that. And she's the queen of the triads, and yeah, she was just supposed to appear in a couple of scenes and be killed, and then just be referred to in some backstory, and people were like, oh, realize what a mistake that had been. But as I kept writing her, then the other character kept evolving, and I realized I couldn't kill her, that she was actually more valuable alive, and that I could solve a few plot issues in one go. And she was supposed to have like a 5,000 word interlude by the end of book 3, which will tell her backstory and it will be the revelation. And ended up being the 3.5 book that I couldn't put it anywhere. So I had a lot of fun writing from the point of view. Another character that I enjoy is Seshat, and that was an intentional almost insert. She's not a Mary Sue or anything like that. And I used the name Chronodendron, so we have a Chronodendron in the book, so that's me. No, but Seshat, I picked her on purpose because she's a goddess of writing. And I have a lot of fun writing her because that's usually where I dump all my frustrations as a writer. I guess I'm not the only one doing this. I've read many books where at least one character is a writer, and I'm pretty sure there's some rants and characterization in there that any writer can relate to, and it's almost like it's almost cathartic. You just write all your frustrations on her. So that's what I do. And of course, the Darken, which I was Aidan the Darken. It's another character that I had a very different idea for him at the beginning. And the more I write, the more complex he becomes. So I actually don't know. He might end up with his own series at some point. Yeah. Last but not least, Loki, my wild card. Everyone loves writing a Loki because they can just do pretty much anything. So, I think my Loki is a bit more mature than most Lokis. Because I really try to portray him as a father. He really cares for his children, the giant wolf and the world serpent, as any father would. And it's good to see that aspect of the god portrayed, and there's so much you can do with it. At least I have fun creating situations where he has to be a father. And yeah.
Are there any characters that were really hard to write?
Oh gosh, yes. Two in particular come to mind. Three, I might as well. So one is a very extroverted character. And it's actually inspired, and I tried to inspire it in a real life person. But when not being an extrovert myself, I really struggled because some of the behaviors, reactions, they made no sense to me. And I really had to observe and learn and try to make sense of it. So, I'm always uncomfortable in her skin because it's so different from what I am. I always try to give my characters one positive or something that I consider to be a positive attribute of myself and something I consider to be a negative. Just at least, one of each. So when I work their characterization, there is at least something that I can touch with some sincerity, and that would help, everything else that it has nothing to do with anything. And yeah, but even with her, I really struggle with even find something in common to kind of, it was hard. Another one is supposed to be a villain, but I don't want to make, just a twirling mustache villain. For those without the video feed, I just made a very stupid gesture, twirling my invisible mustache. Again, I have to justify his actions, and it's very hard for me to think that way in such a selfish, mean-spirited way. But at the same time, I don't want him just mean. He's clever. He has to be clever. He has to really justify and really have a reason that, the reader would go, at least stop a second to consider, would I in that situation, kind of. And, that is hard to get that across. And, another character, it's very vain and always in love. And I thought it would be fun to write, just channel my inner teenager into it. But I'm always worried people would get bored with it because it's just so two-dimensional. And it's not one of the main characters. And I thought about killing him so many times. I'm not going to say his name for things, but if you ever read the books, and I think you'll be able to spot him pretty early on.
Every writer has characters that are hard to write, but you kind of have to do them. You just got to suck it up.
Yeah,
It
no,
seems like sometimes.
Yeah, but the last one, the case is more. I don't think it should be there. I now know how to write the story without that character. So it never quite fit. But I wasn't. I couldn't see it back then. I know I couldn't find a way to fill that gap, and so it. Yeah, it's a character that came out a little bit meh, a bit two dimensional for my taste. And the sad thing, it was very hard to write. I wasn't just disposable character. No, I put a lot of work into him, and it didn't work.
You mentioned that you left a lot on the cutting room floor too. So,
Yeah.
and you had mentioned too that you might use some of that in future stories.
Yes, I already used for Clash of the Tricksters. It used to be a chapter again, another. They always say, don't start the story at the beginning, right? Start when it starts. But I had, all this foundation, all these stories that are the foundation of what became Weird Gods. And I'm having fun just, going back. Maybe then Weird Gods would make more sense. I don't know. It's there. I think it would be a shame, since I can, again, one of the few perks of self-publishing, you can do what you want. Like in time, I'll put it out there. Right now, I'm working on the sequel, not more prequel. I'm working on a sequel to the series. I will publish it, but I'll probably make it available for fans chapter by chapter on some platform I haven't decided yet.
Oh, okay. So a serialization then.
Yes, but just
Okay.
for the fans, for the people that stayed with me all these years. I think this
Yeah.
one's for them. All these stories that never made into the main bulk, and so I don't have to worry a lot about making sense. I don't have to explain too much of the background. And if someone wants to read it, sorry, he's gonna have to read the whole thing first. Yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Do you have ideas for stories besides timelessness, like something totally different? Do you think you will explore something else, or are you so focused in the timelessness that this kind of consumes what you're doing?
That's what happened to me this year. I started a new project and under a pen name, and then that derailed my main project, and now then I'm kind of stuck between the two because yes, it's something completely different over the years, but more recently, after I finished the series, after that was done, I started thinking of how to write something different, and I've met some really good writers online, terrible influencers if they are listening to this, that kind of pushed me to try first short stories and then just different stories, just try something different, just let my imagination go. And I did, like I said, under a pen name. I have few short stories out and a novella. It's good, or it works really well up to a point. I'm still not able to handle the two at the same time, so I'm gonna have to go back to the series while the side project is on hold. But yeah, once you open that door, I spent years inside this universe, with this living with these characters for over 20 years. So they do take a lot of mental space. But the moment you open yourself to new ideas, they come. Oh yes, they come. You're just writing them down. That's the problem.
Do you find though that because you spent so much time with the timelessness characters that it's not quite so hard when you're done with another side project to get back into that? It's easier
Yeah,
to kind of slip right back into that.
you'd think it would be, but no. I really struggle to compartmentalize, I suppose. They start sounding like each other. That's the main problem. I can keep the
Oh,
story separated, but I can tell that, the characters in one story are talking like the characters in Timelessness, or vice versa. That, the character then that I've been writing for 10 years suddenly sounds like the character I've been writing for 3 months. It's not the same character, but the dialogue comes out similar. There's definitely a glitch somewhere that I need to fix before continuing.
now speaking for myself, it's like when I read something and I'm trying to write my own stories, sometimes I find that what I read like if somebody else is writing, starts to get incorporated into my story. So you're
Hmm.
talking about that with having two different projects and that slipping into there. Do you find that too? When like if you're reading
With
something that you might kind of start your writing might start changing a little bit.
it has happened, and there are authors that I read while I'm writing because it helps. I'm not trying to mimic them. I can't, but especially if they write completely different from my style, it kind of helps me. And others that no way, I have to put their books completely, out of sight and mind because I can't help myself not to try me. But I can't tell you why, why that happens with specific authors. It's not a similarity thing. At least I don't see it that way. It's just some voices are kind of louder than others. But yeah, sometimes when I notice that other author's voice is the one talking, I'm like, no, I can't read it. Not now.
So we touched on it a little bit, and you mentioned that you could have quite a few books in this series. But what are your plans that readers could expect coming from you?
Well, so hopefully this serialization of what I hope is another novel in a timelessness universe. It's coming up hopefully before the end of the year. I would like to have a good 30 chapters done before starting. Hopefully the whole, but by done I mean revised and edited, not just written. And that for me takes a long time. Just going through that phase more, yeah, double or three times more than just writing a draft. Drafts, when you're in a mood, when they go well, they go really well. I can write them really fast. It's just all the time afterwards to make them good. Yeah, no one will be able to understand the words otherwise. So I'm writing on that, and if I manage to get at least those 30 chapters, that's what I promised myself. I will go back to my side project. But until then, no discipline, like we discussed.
Okay.
That's the plan. But it's a very humble plan. I'm focused now on selling books rather than writing, which is unfortunate. But I really want to get people on board the timelessness wagon so they can enjoy what's coming.
Oh, good. And then beyond those two projects, is it kind of just up in the air then of what you expect?
Oh, like I said, many more stories are gathering dust on the hard drive or just waiting to be written in a timelessness universe. And ideas keep popping up. So I will definitely keep writing. I hope to keep publishing. I don't know how things are, but I'm definitely going to keep writing. And yeah, for as long as I can. It's what I do, what I love doing.
Well, your readers will enjoy knowing that there's much more of Susana Imaginario coming up.
Oof, yes, hope so.
Well, I really enjoyed visiting with you about your books and your characters and your writing. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
No, I can't think of anything. I mean, go and read the books if you want more spoilers and you want to make sense of all the nonsense I've been talking about. Like I said, it does make sense eventually. I demand a lot of patience from my readers as well. And just thank you so much for having me, and
Thank you, Susanna. It's been pleasant talking to you.
thank you.